Imagine you're sitting in a cold room wearing only thin clothes. After that, you'll be wrapped in wet cloths. In this condition, an ordinary person would quickly shiver and feel cold. But there are some Tibetan monks who have managed to stay calm and warm their bodies using a special method of breathing and meditation. In 1981, Harvard cardiologist Herbert Benson studied some monks who practiced Tumo meditation. His team measured the temperature in different parts of their bodies while they performed the technique. The study showed that some monks could raise the temperature of their fingers and toes by up to 8.3 degrees Celsius. This doesn't mean that their whole bodies became extremely hot. What's clear is that they were able to raise it. The biggest temperature increase was in their hands and feet, the parts of the body that usually get cold first when the surroundings are cold. In another demonstration reported by the Harvard Gazette, there were also monks who were wrapped in cold, wet sheets while meditating. As they continued their practice, the sheets gradually dried because of the heat released by their bodies. But how are they able to do this? This technique is called Tumo. It's an advanced meditation practice in Tibetan Buddhism. It's often referred to as inner fire because the practitioner feels a warmth that starts in the stomach area and spreads throughout the body. Two important things are combined here. The first is strong and controlled breathing. The practitioner takes a deep breath, holds it for a moment, and tightens the muscles and stomach. This is called vase breathing because it's like filling a container and sealing the air inside the body. The second is visualization. While breathing, the practitioner imagines a small flame below the navel. In their tradition, they imagine the flame gradually growing and its warmth spreading throughout the body. This may sound mystical, but real measurable changes in the body have been observed. In 2013, a researcher named Maria Kojevnikov and her team also conducted a study. They studied skilled Tumo practitioners in eastern Tibet and compared them to people who were not used to this kind of meditation. For some skilled practitioners, their core body temperature reached up to 38.3 degrees Celsius. This is equivalent to a mild fever, but it is not caused by illness or intense physical exercise. The study also found that the technique has two parts. Strong breathing helps quickly raise the body's heat, and visualization. Visualization and intense focus help maintain the heat for a longer period. When ordinary participants tried the breathing technique, their temperature also increased slightly, but they weren't able to raise and maintain it like those who have been practicing for many years. This shows that it's not just a matter of simple thinking. The breathing muscles are really working hard, the heartbeat also changes, and the body's heat production increases. At the same time, the practitioner uses focus and visualization to control his reaction to the cold. Science does not fully understand everything that happens in Tumo yet. Only a small number of people have been included in the studies. But one thing is clear. Through long training, controlled breathing, and intense concentration, some Tumo practitioners can change their body temperature in a way that is difficult for ordinary people to do. Despite this, there is still a part of Tumo that science cannot fully explain, and that is the effect of imagining fire. In a study conducted in 2013, it was found that strong and controlled breathing is the main reason why the body heats up. But it's also possible that clearly imagining fire helps maintain the heat. It's still unknown how exactly the brain does this. It's possible that because of intense focus, a person can control their breathing better, cells, and the production of body heat. But until now, science still doesn't have a complete explanation. From this extraordinary ability, let's move on to another Tibetan tradition that has something to do with death. This is called sky burial or Jator. For many foreigners, this ritual may seem frightening or shocking, but for some Tibetan Buddhists, this is a respected and normal burial practice. When a person dies, the family usually prays first, along with religious leaders. Afterwards, the body is brought to a designated place in the mountains, far from residences. There, the body is prepared to be eaten by vultures. There are people who are trained and specialized in doing this. They are called rogyapa. They cut up the body to make it easier for the birds to eat. This is hard to understand for those who are not familiar with their culture, but for them, when a person dies, the body is no longer the person himself. The life is gone. That's why the body can be given as food to other creatures. They consider this the final act of kindness. Even if a person is dead, other living beings can still benefit from his body. This is also related to an important belief in Buddhism. Nothing is permanent. The body ages, deteriorates, and eventually disappears. That's why for them, people shouldn't cling too much to the physical body. There are also practical reasons why sky burials became common. In some parts of Tibet, the Tibetan plateau is high, rocky, and very cold. In many places, it's hard to dig the ground because it's hard or frozen. There are also very few trees, so there's not enough wood needed for cremation. Because of this, offering the body to vultures became practical. But this doesn't mean that this is the only burial method throughout Tibet. There is cremation, regular burial, and other rituals depending on the place, family, and religious tradition. There are also stories that say it's a good sign if the vultures eat the body quickly. But this is not the same belief in all places. There are also some reports that the Rogyapas sometimes talk or joke around while working. For a foreigner, this might seem disrespectful, but for them, it's just part of a job they've been doing for a long time. It doesn't mean they don't respect the dead, they just have a different way of looking at the body and death. This is where another important Tibetan teaching about death comes in, and this is the Bardo Thodol. It's more commonly known in the Western world as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but it's not just a simple book about the dead. The Bardo Thodol is commonly translated as liberation through hearing in the intermediate state. Bardo refers to the state between death and the next rebirth. In some Tibetan Buddhist traditions, it is believed that this can last up to 49 days. This is not a belief held by all Buddhists. This is only a part of some Tibetan teachings about consciousness, karma, and rebirth. The Bardo Thodol is read aloud to the person who has died or is near death. Its purpose is to guide the consciousness so that it does not become confused or afraid of the experiences it is said to encounter after death. According to the text, the consciousness may see intense lights, various forms of beings, and frightening images, but it does not say that all of these are real monsters coming from outside. Instead, these are described as forms of one's own mind, experiences said to be memories, and things that a person cannot let go of. That's why the consciousness is repeatedly reminded not to be afraid. The message of the text is simple. Recognize that what you see comes from your own mind, according to death.
Isip, ayon sa paniniwala.
When the consciousness recognizes the clear light and does not run away from it, it may achieve liberation from the repeated cycle of death and rebirth. This is a religious belief. This has not yet been proven by modern science. Some also compare the descriptions in the Bardo Thodol to near-death experiences. There are people who almost died who told stories about a bright light, a strange presence, or a feeling that they were separated from their bodies. But the descriptions are not enough. They are not similar enough to suggest that these experiences have a single origin. In science, there are some possible explanations. This may be related to lack of oxygen, changes in blood flow, the release of chemicals in the brain, and unusual electrical activity when the body is in extreme danger. This is still being studied. There is still no clear evidence that consciousness can survive separate from the brain. The Bardo Thodol was also not created as a scientific record of what happens after death. It is a religious guide that was developed from Tibetan Buddhist teachings and meditation practices. The book became more well-known in the English-speaking world in 1927. The English version of this is based on the translation by Lama Kasi Dawa Samduk and was published by Walter Y. Evans Wentz. The name The Tibetan Book of the Dead was created to make it easier for Western readers to understand. Because of this, many psychologists, writers, and researchers outside of Tibet have read it. Eventually, some people used its ideas in the study of psychology, dreams, consciousness, and psychedelic experiences. But the real purpose of the text is different. For Tibetan practitioners, it's not a story meant to scare people about the afterlife. It is a guide to facing death without being enslaved by fear, and to learn how to let go of the body, name, memories, and everything that a person once called the self. Over time, some Western writers have used the Bardo in a different way. Instead of a guide about death, they used it as a basis for studying psychology and the transformation of consciousness. But this is not the original purpose of the text. For Tibetan Buddhists, it was created to guide a person as they face death and what is believed to be the next state of consciousness. Despite this, there is another belief in Tibet that is even harder to prove. It is called the rainbow body. This is part of Dzogchen, an advanced teaching in Tibetan Buddhism. According to the belief, when a skilled practitioner reaches the highest level of spiritual understanding, something extraordinary can happen to their body after death. It is said that the body shrinks over several days until only hair and nails are left. In other stories, it is said that the body completely disappears and turns into light. There are also accounts about rainbow bodies. A strange light, sound, and fragrant smell appear near the body. But it's important to make this clear. There is still no rainbow body case that has been proven by independent scientific investigation. Most of the stories come from religious texts, practitioners, students, and witnesses. There is also no clear video, medical record, or continuous scientific observation that proves a body really turned into light. There are some possible explanations for these stories. The body may have been moved, buried, or cremated without other people seeing it. The fragrant smell could also come from incense, which is commonly used in rituals. Meanwhile, the unusual light or rainbow could be caused by sunlight, clouds, rain, or environmental conditions. It's also possible that the witnesses remember things differently, especially if they already believe that a miracle will happen. But these are only possible explanations. We also can't prove that this is what really happened in every story. So the accurate way to describe it is simple. The rainbow body is an important belief in the Dzogchen tradition. But this has not yet been proven by science. Even without scientific proof, it still plays a big role in their faith. For practitioners, this shows the belief that a person can completely let go of their attachment to the physical body when they achieve the highest spiritual understanding. There is another unique way in which Tibetan teachings have been preserved and expanded. This is called Therma, which means hidden spiritual treasure. This is strongly associated with Padma Sambhava, an Indian Buddhist master who became a very important figure in the spread of Buddhism in Tibet in the 8th century. In the Tibetan tradition, it is believed that he hid certain teachings because people at that time were not yet ready to understand them. It is said that some were hidden in caves, stones, temples, and other places. There is also what is called mind therma, where the teaching appears or arises in the mind of a practitioner through vision or meditation. The person who discovers or receives this kind of teaching is called a Thertan, or treasure revealer. The Therma tradition is strongest in the Nyingma school of Tibetan Buddhism. They do not consider it as just an ordinary hidden document. For them, it is a teaching that was hidden, so it would appear at a time when people need it. But it is difficult to prove this from the outside. When someone claims to have received an ancient teaching in a vision, there is no simple scientific test that can determine if their claim is true. This can also be abused. A person can create their own text and claim that it is a long, hidden teaching. Because of this, not everyone who claims to be a Thertan is simply accepted. The religious community also examines their character, training, teachings, and whether the message aligns with their tradition. Therma has an important role in Tibetan Buddhism. It provides a way for new interpretations to emerge without claiming to change the entire religion. It's like an old message that is opened at the right time. In this way, the tradition is able to respond to new problems while remaining connected to its origins. From the hidden teachings, let's now go to a place that many people have searched for, even though it only exists in a novel. This is Shangri-La. It is often described as a quiet, and hidden valley in the Himalayas. It is said that people here live long lives, far from the chaos, sickness, and problems of the world. But the name Shangri-La does not come from an ancient Tibetan myth. It was created by the British writer James Hilton for his novel Lost Horizon, which was released in 1933. In the story, Shangri-La is a secret and peaceful place hidden in the mountains. This means there is no solid evidence that there is a real place in Tibet that has long been called Shangri-La. But Hilton didn't just invent the whole idea out of nowhere. There is a Tibetan belief about Bayul or hidden valleys. According to tradition, these are safe and sacred places that can be found by people who are spiritually prepared. Stories like these may have had an influence. Old travel accounts about Tibet also contributed to the creation of the fictional Shangri-La. Because the novel became popular, many places were later compared to Shangri-La. There were also travelers and explorers who searched for a valley similar to the one in the story. But just because there is a beautiful hidden valley in the Himalayas, it doesn't mean that it's the real Shangri-La. James Hilton's Shangri-La is fictional. Bayls, by contrast, belong to the Tibetan religious tradition. The idea of a hidden paradise is related, but they are not exactly the same thing. From 1938 to 1939, a German expedition led by Ernst Schaefer also went to Tibet. The group were members of the SS, and their journey was supported by the Nazi system. They conducted geographic, zoological, cultural, and anthropological research. There are popular stories that suggest their main goal was to find Shangri-La, or a mystical Aryan civilization. But the real history is more complicated. The expedition was a mix of science, propaganda, racial ideology, and personal interests. It's also not accurate to say they went there just because of James Hilton's novel. This shows how a story can change as it spreads. Shangri-La started as a fictional place, but because, at that time, many Western readers knew little about Tibet, it was gradually mistaken for part of real Tibetan history. And even today, the name Shangri-La is still used to describe a distant, peaceful, and almost perfect place. Not because it was proven to exist, but because the idea it represents is so powerful. A place that's safe from the chaos of the world, even if it can only be found in stories. The name Shangri-La has such a strong appeal that a real place even used it to attract tourists. In 2001, the Chinese government changed the name of Zhongjiang County in Yunnan to Shangri-La. This is not proof that the place in the novel has been found. The famous name was only used to introduce the area as a beautiful mountain destination. But even before the word Shangri-La was invented, there was already a Tibetan belief about hidden valleys called Bul. Bul is not just a secret place on the map. According to tradition, these are sacred valleys intended as safe havens during times of chaos. It is believed that it's not enough to just know the way. The mind and faith of the person entering must also be prepared. One of the most famous examples of this is Pimlico, a vast and hard-to-reach area around the Changpu River in southeastern Tibet and nearby parts of India. It is surrounded by high mountains, dense forests, powerful rivers, and waterfalls. Because the journey is dangerous and difficult, it remained largely unknown to people outside the region for a long time. For pilgrims and monks, Pimlico is important because it is quiet and far from ordinary life. A place like this is suitable for long prayers, meditation, and living without much disturbance. There is no evidence that there are people who do not age or have the secret of immortality inside it. The real reason why Pimlico is special is much simpler. Because of its distance and difficulty to reach, it becomes a place where a person can leave behind the noise and problems of the world for a while. But there is another ability of some advanced meditators that has actually been measured using medical equipment. Aside from the increase in body heat, Herbert Benson's study also found that the body's use of oxygen can significantly decrease while in deep meditation. In a small study on advanced Buddhist meditators, one participant recorded a 64% decrease in metabolism compared to his normal resting state. Metabolism is the amount of energy the body uses to keep functioning. When it slows down, the body needs less oxygen and energy. Breathing and other internal bodily functions also slow down. Usually, these only decrease slightly during sleep. That's why the 64% decrease recorded for the participant was striking. But it's important to note that the study was small, and only a few experienced meditators were examined. This doesn't mean that all monks or everyone who meditates can do this. It also shouldn't be called hibernation or being like the dead. The meditator is still awake and in control, and the body returns to normal after the session. What is clear is that there are some highly trained practitioners who can slow down their breathing and oxygen consumption more than what is usually seen in simple meditation. In 1985, Benson's team also filmed some monks who spent a cold night in the high parts of the Himalayas. According to the Harvard report, they were at an altitude of about 15,000 feet, and the temperature dropped to around 0 degrees Fahrenheit, or about negative 18 degrees Celsius. They were only wearing thin shawls. They slept on the rocks and did not huddle together to get warmth from each other. In the video, there is also no clear sign of intense shivering. This is impressive, but it doesn't mean they are no longer affected by the cold. Their bodies are used to it, their training is extensive, and their breathing, focus, posture, and experience in cold places may have also helped. It's also not safe to imitate this without training and medical supervision. Extreme cold can cause hypothermia, loss of consciousness, and death. Benson saw that meditation could help in studying stress, anxiety, blood pressure, pain, and other conditions connected to the body's reaction to stress. But meditation is not a substitute for medicine, doctors, or surgery. It can only be an additional way to help the body and mind, depending on a person's condition. There are modern breathing methods like those popularized by Wim Hof that also use controlled breathing and cold exposure. But this is not exactly the same as Tumo. The training, purpose, spiritual background, and methods of practice are different. A few minutes of breathing exercises are not equivalent to many years of teaching and daily practice in the monastery. The connection between Tibetan Buddhism and modern science is also important. With the help of the Dalai Lama and organizations like the Mind and Life Institute, Buddhist practitioners and scientists have had discussions about the brain, meditation, emotion, and consciousness. The purpose of these studies is not to prove that all Buddhist beliefs are correct. The goal is to find out which practices have real effects on the body and if they can help other people. The Dalai Lama himself also said that if science clearly proves that a Buddhist belief is wrong, it should be changed. This shows that science and spiritual traditions don't have to be in conflict, but the boundaries still need to be clear. There are things that can be measured, such as changes in temperature, breathing, and oxygen consumption. There are also things that are only part of religious belief, such as the rainbow body and experiences after death. When these two are combined as if both have been proven, the story becomes wrong and confusing. The true value of Tibetan practices is not because they hide some kind of magic. What's more important is what they show about the training of the mind and body. For many years, they repeatedly practiced breathing, focus, and meditation until they learned to control some reactions that are usually just automatic. But this kind of ability is not a shortcut and can't be gained from a quick tutorial. The most important lesson from Tibet is not about how to perform miracles. It's about how much the body can change when a person has the right training, enough time, and the discipline to do the same practice every day.